This is part 5 of my video series dealing with how group counseling and RPGs have common ground. And this is talking about the second session. Certain dynamics in the second session require the special attention of the GM, though many are similar to those of the first session. The GM must always be aware that some players continue to be uncomfortable during the second session, and that he is still setting the tone for the group. Things you have to think about are opening the second session, planning for the letdown, and ending the second session. You want to evaluate the success of the first session, and you're going to have new members too. If new members join the group, it is usually a good idea to open up by making introductions. So these would be people that weren't around for the first section, or the first session. If time is of the essence, introductions can be easily effected in a round in which all members state their names and something about themselves. When new members join at the second session, the leader must also decide how much time should be spent informing them of what has happened during the previous session. If the GM feels that there is a lot to explain, he should try to do so prior to the second session rather than during it. Returning members could become bored by a lengthy recap of the first session. Informing new players of the events of the first session helps them adjust more quickly to the group and keeps them from feeling in the dark when other members talk about something that happened during the first session. And this is talking about the success of the first session. If the first session was reasonably successful, a positive tone was set and most of the players seemed to like the session. The GM will simply plan to do more of the same in the second session. On the other hand, if it did not go smoothly, the GM will have to plan a second session that takes into account what the players did not value in the first one. Probably the first step in doing this is to consider why the session went poorly. Some possible reasons are as follows. Players were afraid to talk. The group was held at a bad time of the day. Players came to the group late and disrupted what was going on. The GM was unclear about the needs of the members and the purpose of the group. The room was not conducive to what you're trying to do. Players reacted negatively to the GM. The session was not planned well, or you ad-libbed poorly. Too much or too little time was spent on warming up. If the first group did not go well, the GM may change the room, the meeting time, or the players themselves. It may be necessary to ask certain players not to return. When planning for the opening of the second session, the GM may choose from 3 options. 1, to address what went wrong in an effort to explain that future sessions will not be similar to the first one. 2, to restate the purpose of the group and make no attempt to verbalize any of the negative events of the first session. Or 3, to elicit from all players their reactions to the first session and to try to come up with some mutual solutions that everyone can agree on. The advantage of the GM addressing what went wrong during the first session is that she honestly acknowledges that she realizes that the first session was not a good one and can point out ways that the group can be better. Our point is that the GM needs to consider how the first session went when planning the second session. If the group did not go well, the GM will most definitely need to plan to counteract the bad beginning. Even if the first group did go poorly, the leader can come back with a good second session if he plans one relevant and interesting to the majority of the players. It is also helpful to arrive at the second session early and talk informally to players before the group begins, because sometimes people show up early. This gives the GM some idea of how players reacted to the first session. It also gives him a chance to answer members' questions about the group and to get to know them. This is another section, planning for the possible letdown. A skilled GM will anticipate a letdown during the second session. By letdown, we mean that the excitement exhibited among players during the first session is not always present in the second or following sessions. This letdown is often disconcerting to a beginning group GM if he has made the mistake of thinking that the energy present in the first session will present itself throughout the rest of them. As a result, he often fails to plan the group adequately or to second guess the change of atmosphere. And basically it's just part of human nature, something's new and fresh and people are excited about it, and then after it becomes a routine or a habit or a pattern, it can become less, interesting. So that's why you want to change things up and keep things interesting. Ending the second session. The GM should plan to spend a considerable amount of time ending the second session, because this is the first time that you can gather feedback from players. The first session is not usually a good indication of how members view the group and what it will be like. The second session is a much more reliable time to ask these things. Players' reactions will tell the GM what changes need to be made, because now they've actually played through 2 sessions. They've gotten used to your habits, your GM style, the way you do things, and they've gotten used to more of the players and everything at the table. And there might be some things that you don't even expect to be a problem, and they might tell you, this needs to change. Concluding comments. We pointed out the importance of the first and second sessions. It is very important that the GM plan these sessions well, since they set the tone for the rest of the group, for the rest of the time playing. We discussed the need for the GM to pay attention to the content, as well as to the comfort level, and to the purpose of the group. It is important that the GM not focus too long on one person or topic during the first sessions, as it is usually better to get more members involved. The GM should likewise not spend too much time going over the ground rules, because they really just want to get to playing. In planning for the second session, the GM needs to be prepared for the typical letdown. If the first session did not go well, the GM will want to specifically prepare to counteract that in the second session. Most important is to plan these 2 first sessions and to be prepared to put out a great deal of energy and effort, since they often determine how the remainder of the sessions will go and how good your group can be. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.